in thinking about the whole issue of how it is that we've come to look at dyslexia and the dyslexic mind the way we do, I sort of thought about other ways that we look at different kinds of things and decide whether things are normal or things are abnormal, things are good or things are problems. And I was struck by an image. Shortly after Fernette and I were married, we went to Kauai, and on the north shore of Kauai there's a lighthouse called the Kilauea Point Lighthouse, and it sits out at the end of a bluff that's surrounded by these cliffs on three sides. And because of its position, it's the first landmass for thousands of miles. The breezes come off the ocean and strike the cliffs and rise up into the air, so it makes this beautiful updraft, and it's incredibly attractive to seabirds, and especially albatrosses. And the albatrosses will come and gather there and just float on the wind just for hours and hours, just because they enjoy it. And nobody who looks at those albatrosses riding the wind can doubt that flying is their essence. Flying is what they're adapted to do. It's their core of who they are. And no one ever looking at those albatrosses wonders why it is that there are no studies in the scientific literature of walking dysfunction in albatrosses. But there are thousands and thousands of studies about how beautiful they fly and what we can learn from their flight. So I wondered why it was, when it comes to dyslexia, exactly the opposite case is true. Why have we taken this opposite approach? Dyslexic processing has typically been viewed as if its essence were difficulty with reading and spelling, while the talents of dyslexic individuals, when they've been taken account of at all, have been assumed to be something that's sort of incidental to the wiring that makes individuals dyslexic. Now, it may not be surprising that that was initially the case, since people first noticed that there was a difference in wiring in dyslexic individuals as a result of the fact that they all shared this challenge with reading and spelling. But this deficit-centered view doesn't make any sense to hold anymore, a deficit-centric view, because it's incompatible with what we've learned about the strengths that also accompany dyslexic processing. So why do we still, with this information that's been accumulating about the link between dyslexic processing and ability or talent, why do we still assume that at its heart dyslexia is a disorder and that the payoff is going to come from studying the deficits and problems and how to fix them solely? Shouldn't we instead conclude that dyslexic processing is really a potentially beneficial way of wiring the brain, and that the payoff will come from learning how to identify, nurture, and use dyslexia-associated strengths? These strengths are the flight of the albatross. This isn't a silly question. How do we tell the difference between essential function and incidental challenge? It's the kind of question that scientists and physicians think about all the time. And one way that we answer these kinds of questions is by looking at the numbers. Neurologist Norman Geschwind, who many of you remember fondly, said over 30 years ago that it's a general principle that whenever some disadvantageous condition is widely dispersed throughout the population, one must ask whether it's a purely unfavorable phenomenon or whether there's some countervailing advantage. In the case of dyslexia, the best research suggests that 15 to 20% of the population in the United States meets criteria for dyslexia. And if we look more generally at processing style, if we look at processing features rather than strict criteria on reading and spelling deficits, then the numbers look even higher. Probably around a third of people share a very similar processing capacity. Many of those better reading individuals are diagnosed with things like ADHD. So by anyone's standards, these kinds of numbers constitute a wide dispersal within the population and suggest that so many people are wired in this way because there's something favorable or advantageous about that. And beyond the numbers, the case that dyslexic processing is a favored trait is supported by growing numbers of other observations, like the studies that we talked about in our book, that display, for example, an increase in 3D spatial reasoning ability. There's additional studies that have come out even since our book was out a year and a half ago that support that. Superior performance in certain visual perceptual tasks, greater performance in certain kinds of creativity tests, an increased chance of successful entrepreneurship, and a similar increase in dyslexia among students in training programs in fields like engineering, art, and design. And remember, these numbers have been attained in the face of a situation with conditions at school and in the workplace that are almost perfectly tailored to prevent dyslexic individuals from achieving success. In addition, when we look at the way that dyslexic brains are wired and perform, it's increasingly clear that we're not dealing with brains that are simply trying but failing to work like everyone else's. Instead, dyslexic processing reflects a very different pattern of brain structure and function, whose essence is to create strengths and abilities rather than simply challenges. The form the abilities take varies, as we described in the book, but they relate primarily to skill in seeing large-scale patterns, to spotting relationships, or to recombining information in new and interesting ways. These are the skills that lie at the heart of creativity and innovation, and the value of these talents is easily seen in the amazing dyslexic individuals who are here in this room this weekend. We have artists, we have entrepreneurs and filmmakers and physicians, poets and teachers and scientists and psychologists and attorneys and counselors and strategists and creators of all kinds, all of whom display a remarkable skill in spotting patterns or relationships or recombining information in new and interesting ways. While many people think that dyslexic individuals are the proverbial last kids chosen in the great gym class of life, even a quick check confirms that the dyslexic community contains many of the most creative and accomplished individuals on the planet. We all know their names and we all know their accomplishments, and many of them are here tonight. With such a team and with such abilities, how could we as a dyslexic community possibly lose? Yet somehow we are losing, and despite the scattered successes we've enjoyed, this is clearly the case. Currently, 3/4 of all dyslexic students aren't identified, and most who are still are not receiving an education that either remediates their challenges or helps to nurture and develop their talents. Our failure to understand and engage students doesn't just lead to underachievement and fewer chances to develop their talents, but also tragically to heightened risks of suicide, depression, delinquency, and substance abuse. And the situation for adults in the workplace is not much better. We're consistently underemploying and putting individuals into jobs that are not well tailored for them. The bottom line, the dyslexic community is losing badly, and the score is being kept and lost in damaged lives. What's most remarkable about this failure is that it's occurring without a team that truly represents the dyslexic community ever taking the field. How can this be? Everyday dyslexic individuals are tackling and solving the very toughest problems in business, science, politics, healthcare, personal relationship, and every other area of human endeavor using their remarkable creative talents. So why then do so few of these creative individuals apply these talents directly to addressing the challenges faced by other dyslexic individuals? Why do our great dyslexic thinkers who show such boldness in tackling so many impossible problems seem content to let others make the case for the value of dyslexic minds? Why aren't they more involved in charting the courses of the organizations and institutions that work to help dyslexic students and adults? And again, there are many exceptions present in this room. I'm speaking of a population of 20% of the United States. Why aren't we seeing more people like we see in this room? And why do we lack a clear dyslexic community where dyslexic individuals and their families feel linked by a common identity and experience, and through which they can join together to make their voices heard? These findings are so surprising that they call for an answer, and we think we know, at least in part, what that answer is. We believe that we experts, the professionals, the researchers, and educators have focused so much on the deficits, or disabilities as we've called them, that accompany dyslexic processing, that we focus so much on the awkward steps rather than the soaring flight, that we've deprived one of the most creative, dynamic, and accomplished groups of individuals on this planet of the confidence they need to express themselves on their own behalf. We've consistently failed to recognize what the dyslexic mind is for and the advantages that have led to its high prevalence in the population. And we've done this so much that we've firmly conveyed a view of the dyslexic mind as a kind of disability. And in the process, we've deprived the dyslexic leaders and innovators who show such boldness in their own professions of the confidence to argue and work on their own behalf. We know from long observation that most non-dyslexic individuals simply can't understand how thoroughly the years of struggle in the classroom and workplaces can undermine the self-confidence of even the most accomplished dyslexic individuals, making it hard for them to believe with conviction that their minds have valuable talents and abilities, let alone to express this belief with conviction to others. We've built organizations, institutions, and careers by focusing on dyslexia-related challenges while almost entirely neglecting the things that dyslexic minds do well. As a result, when dyslexic individuals come to so many of the events we organize, all they hear is what they can't do, not what they can. No wonder so many have stopped coming. We should be ashamed of the lack of interest we've shown in dyslexia-associated strengths and in our failure to even say, I may not yet have all the data that I want, but I can see there's something special about you and about the way you view the world. Our dyslexic friends have clearly noticed that when visionaries like Norman Geschwind, Margaret Rawson, Thomas West, and even Samuel Orton begin pointing out the strengths dyslexic individuals often show, that many of us have seemed more intent on critiquing their data and methods than on learning from their observations. Even on the rare occasions when we've recognized the abilities, we've often concluded that they arose because dyslexic individuals were so bad at reading and spelling, they had to funnel their energies into the few areas where they had a chance to succeed. The message we've conveyed is clear. Your deficits are your essence, and your strengths are just those few areas where you've managed to avoid the downward pull of your weaknesses. How could we suppose that in such a hostile climate, dyslexic individuals who've already been taught to doubt themselves would feel confident enough to assert themselves on their own behalf? Instead, many have stayed on the sidelines, handing the fight to others as if they needed permission to speak, and that permission had been denied. But permission isn't needed. The evidence is clear and getting clearer all the time. There really are benefits to having a dyslexic kind of mind. And these benefits are just the kinds that make dyslexic individuals so capable of speaking and strategizing on their own behalf. All that's needed is the confidence to begin. The dyslexic community is like a lion that's been kept in a cage, supposedly for its own protection. But you don't defend a lion, you just turn it loose. And that's our goal this weekend, to unleash the power of the dyslexic community to address the challenges facing its members so we can begin building the confidence and community that we need to create change. We believe the place to start is by moving beyond an exclusive focus on dyslexia-associated challenges to focus more on the strengths and talents that dyslexic people often show. We should promote a more balanced and positive view, a positive identity that dyslexic individuals can embrace and which can draw the support of the non-dyslexic world eager to benefit from dyslexic creativity, innovation, and problem solving. We should set clear goals and pursue concrete strategies for more productively educating dyslexic students and employing dyslexic workers. And we should learn to identify, nurture, and use the strengths that are an essential part of dyslexic processing. This isn't a feel-good, wouldn't it be nice if it were true motivational pitch. A strength-based approach is the most practical and productive one we could adopt because it leads directly to concrete strategies for research, education, work, community building, and advocacy. And we're here this weekend to explore strategies in each of these areas. Our goal isn't to replace other efforts, but to add to and aid them and to create a new interest in a non-dyslexic community that wonders why it should care. By focusing on strengths, we can show what we'll all gain if we make schools and workplaces that can foster and harness the power and creativity of the dyslexic mind. And to the incredible dyslexic individuals who've been pushed to the sidelines, to the visionaries, pioneers, and innovators in the dyslexic community, it's time to come out of the stands and come onto the field. This is your game, and your creativity, practical know-how, and relentless energy can turn the tide. Remember, many of the most important challenges facing the dyslexic community are not technical or scientific. They're practical, like how to change the way the non-dyslexic world perceives the value of the dyslexic mind, how to provide an education that nourishes dyslexic strengths and remediates challenges at an affordable cost that's available to all students, and how to change the way the non-dyslexic world perceives the value of the dyslexic mind, how to design jobs that fit well and use the talents of dyslexic individuals while avoiding the pitfalls that prevent advancement. These are the same kinds of problems that many of you tackle every day, and no one does it better. This weekend is just the beginning of a conversation. And as we explore the implications of a strength-based approach for building a positive dyslexic image and identity, educating and employing dyslexic individuals, and future directions for the dyslexic movement, let's each think about what we can offer to make a world where more dyslexic individuals can flourish by using their talents. Thank you.